Welcome back, everyone, to episode number 12 of the Planeswalker podcast. My name is Jason Florent. I'm joined by my illustrious co-hosts, Danny T. Law.
Hi, everyone.
And Seth, why did I play Esper Manfield?
What?
Today we have a great show for you. We're going to go all over Historic. We're going to break down literally every archetype under the sun, give you our thoughts on why you should or should not play them, why they might be a good call to pick up or avoid for the upcoming Star City Games tournaments and the Arena Qualifier tournament happening in 2 weeks. Before we do that, though, we would like to thank our sponsor, Cool Stuff Inc., for all the cool stuff. Go to coolstuffinc.com. They have playmats, dice. They buy and sell cards. They have articles. You can find sweet podcasts like this one. Make sure you check out coolstuffinc.com. Tell them we sent you. All right. So, Historic. I have not played Historic in a couple of months because it's kind of all standard all the time. But I know, Seth and Danny, you guys have played quite a bit of Historic. Seth, you especially just played in the Zendikar Rising Championship this past weekend, which was a half standard, half historic tournament, with the top 8 also being historic, I believe, which I didn't realize that was the case before watching on Sunday. So why don't you guys give us a little bit of your thoughts of kind of the lay of the land, what ended up doing well at the tournament, what anything that you were surprised by that did particularly well or didn't do well?
So, from a viewer perspective, not participating, I anticipated to be Sultai and 4-color be on the top of the field. I was surprised to see a lot of Junt. There was way more than I was sure there will be Junt, but it seemed kind of awkward because the 4-color will be around, and sure, with Chandra you get some ways to deal with the pick, and that's why people go to Sultai. I like the Saurus decks. I think they are really strong. The control decks in general. Not a big fan of Goblins, but people were like, yeah, maybe I can bring in Goblins because the hate is a bit gone, maybe. But yeah, I'm most surprised to see that much Junt and sacrifice decks, but not surprised of the good results of the Sultai list.
So yeah, I was the main driving force behind the Sultai deck, just because I had the most experience playing it. If you flash back to the Mythic Championship that I won, I was actually playing against Gabdasif in the finals against Sack. So, and just having played the deck a ton, I was playing it on the ladder. I never really got super into the white. That's obviously going to be the controversial point. I remember streaming it and everyone's asking me, why aren't you playing white? Well, is Sultai really better than 4-color? And it's like, that's a question that I'm so sick of at this point because I've heard it so many times. It's like, I'm playing Sultai. I'm not playing 4-color. So you can use your own logic and think that I obviously think that it's better, at least for that tournament. Now, there are some incentives to playing the Yasharn, but I felt like because we had the Cry of the Carnariums, we have actually a pretty decent sacrifice matchup, and as we saw in the top 8, people are actually boarding out Yasharns in the mirror and in these other matchups, so it just didn't really feel like a card that was necessary. And I like the clean mana base. I liked having 2 copies of Castle Lochthwain in our list is really good in the mirror, right? Because you're a 3-color deck, but now you have this card draw engine that doesn't require you to actually cast anything. So you might think that the 4-color deck is the more powerful one, but actually the 3-color version, I felt like had a better late game if we could get to it. Now, we saw in the top 8, Nassif actually lose some of his games due to just not get it, like missing land drops and not getting to the late game. But I think once you do get there, having that card is pretty important.
I see.
Yeah, for sure.
What's funny is I just got a flashback. I think it was the one Christoph won, the PT, when you played Reclamation and people were like 4-color and added white. So I just assume you don't like to add the white to 3 colors. It's a
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the mana base is a huge thing, and Castle always felt really good in the mirrors. Yeah.
So I guess my biggest surprise of the tournament is the same as yours. I mean, seeing the most played deck being Sacrifice just was both surprising and confusing, because when I saw it, I thought to myself, well, we must have made a mistake. Like our testing must have been off. But no, it wasn't. A bunch of people just chose Sack, even though it has a pretty not favorable matchup against the Sultai decks, which just was mind-boggling to me. And the deck didn't do particularly well. So that just goes to show you that everyone makes mistakes. I think people tried to level themselves off of the Sultai deck, like in the 4-color deck, just because maybe they didn't feel comfortable playing it, or they wanted to play something like they thought they were playing something that other people weren't playing, and there was this leveling thing that maybe happened. I don't know, or just having experience playing Jund Sack or playing Rakdos Sack in previous standard or historic formats. They thought, well, because I know the deck well, I can just play it here. So I faced off against that deck a lot and ended up going 5-2 in historic. So I can't really complain about my result. We saw, 6 copies of Sultai / 4-color in the top 8. So even though those decks were like a quarter of the field, they represented 75% of the top 8. But we saw, like, as we've been saying, I think that this deck is a good deck. It's probably the best deck, some version of 4-color / Sultai. But it's not an unbeatable deck. Like, it's still a 55% deck. So it's just, you're not going to get the deck to be 75%. So you can't just play the deck and expect to roll over everyone. And we saw in the top 8 that there are ways to attack the deck, whether it be with Goblins or blue-white control.
Yeah, and small caveat there. I mean, the tournament was half standard, so some of those players could have technically had bad Sultai records and good standard records. I think, though, like you say, Sultai as a whole went around like 55-56% or something in the tournament. So like you're saying, there's a bunch of decks in the historic metagame. Lots of them that I haven't tried, that I'm interested in, decks that used to be good in past standards, and you see them pop up for a little bit and they disappear. And I'm really interested to get your guys' thoughts on some of these. There's also some new ones that we've been seeing pop up lately. So I'm just going to throw them at you. Also keep in mind that the Star City Games tournament will be open deck list, a little bit more of a kind of normal metagame. But the Arena Open in 2 weeks is going to be closed deck list, and it's going to be, there's going to be a couple thousand, over 2,000 people qualified. Typically, you kind of, you're going to see the whole gambit of things. So
wait, is it 2 weeks or is it this weekend?
2 weeks.
2 weekends.
Oh, it's 2 weeks. Okay.
So very different tournaments, right? And if anyone's wondering why or thoughts on that, I think for sure, if you're going into a tournament like SCG, having a deck, well, you know what? I'm not even sure if I think the same.
You know what? I have to say it's going to be this weekend, because if you go on the MTG Arena Twitter, it says December 12th and 13th, which is
okay.
Weekend,
yeah, the open is this weekend, but the qualifier is in 2 weeks. That's what it is.
Correct.
Yeah, sorry. I keep.
I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of players may be wanting to play in the open. I'll be playing in it because I can't even play in the qualifiers, so I'm looking forward to that.
Seth already ordered something for 2000.
I know Jason. So Jason may be forgetting it. He may be confusing it, because he may not think that he's going to win the $2,000. But for me, it's like, I've already done it. I've been there, done that. I think I can do it again. So
I usually win around 10,000 gems on those events.
I'm so gem rich.
Just saying, like my 5-2 records are there. But yeah, this time no 5-2. No 5-2.
Okay, so Star City Games this weekend, the Arena Open, which lets Seth win $2,000 and me and Danny win a bunch of gems, is also this weekend. The Keldheim, that was called? Keldheim?
I feel like it's Kaldheim or something.
Is it Kaldheim? It's just Kaldheim, right? Kaldheim.
I don't think we should try to say
the
it.
next championship event qualifier will be in 2 weekends. So those 2 tournaments, very similar, because they're closed deck list. And there's a huge amount of people playing them, so the metagame is typically very wide open. Source City games a little bit more compact. You'll see kind of the top tier decks a lot less rogue stuff. Okay, let's jump into it. So first deck I wanted to talk to you guys about is a deck that came out of nowhere and crushed Standard. Kethis combo. This is a deck that was very good while it was in Standard. Kind of demanded some hate. Popped up in Historic for a little while, had a bit of a run, and then has kind of just fallen off the radar. My assumption was that, I don't know, all the graveyard hate, like things like Cage, other graveyard hate, like out of blue-white decks, are kind of what's holding it down. But I was curious what you guys thought. Is that the case? And does it get anything else from Historic that maybe didn't have when it was in Standard?
So the Kethis decks that are played right now, they go for opponent mills, not for your own Oracle combo stuff. That's the main difference. There's one card, I think it's the 1/1 artifact flyer that you can sacrifice after doing damage, so opponent can't play cards. But I didn't see any play in the tournament.
Hope of Girapur, yeah. Hope of Girapur.
It didn't see any play in the tournament lists. I think it's still a good deck. You can maybe play around Cage, but if there's a Rest in Peace, if that card becomes more popular, it gets way harder. And sure, you can win your game in like turn 3, turn 4, depending how you draw. It's a combo deck. Combo deck tend to be really good against like the sacrifice decks, I think. That's the biggest weakness of the Chant sacrifice always, but I
think the problem with it is it just was never that great of a combo deck for Historic. It's not faster on average than Goblins.
Yeah.
But Goblins is more consistent, right?
Exactly.
Like it's got more if you're playing Goblins, you're not just folding to a Cage or whatever. Whereas the Kethis deck, once you start putting in these hate cards to try to fight off the hate, it's more vulnerable. Also, you're relying on the Kethis so much that even just like stripping the Kethis with a Thoughtseize or something like that can just be pretty devastating.
Yeah, I also think creature-based combo decks are a bit tricky with Sultai around, playing so many spot removals. And the 2 mana 1/3 that mills you for 2 just dies to a push, right? That's not what you want to see.
Yeah. The deck didn't gain much from Kaladesh, but Fatal.
Sorry.
But Fatal Push.
That's great.
Yeah, Fatal Push is a card that is quite good against the deck, as Danny was saying.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised to see people not playing it. The only person who I would see who I think is still probably playing it is BBD, because I know he just doesn't care that much, and so he'll just play it regardless.
Yeah. This is the same with the Breach decks. You know, the Breach decks, they have the same combo in it, and it's the same problem there. You need creatures and you need the graveyards, and it's just easy to take it off. And it's also a turn 4 win.
Yeah, like you guys say, that makes a lot of sense that like if you're going to play one of these combo decks, like the next one we're going to talk about, why not just play Goblins? So, because Goblins, like you say, it's practically a combo deck, but it's, it just like has a backup plan of being a really good aggro deck also. So it just seems better. The other deck that's kind of in this vein, I guess there's a couple. The next one though is Neoform, a deck that I haven't really played with or against that much. It seemed super sweet. Seth, we got to see you pilot it at the end of our Patreon tournament, going up against Blue White. You lost the first game, and then you sideboarded into a Niv Mizzet control deck for games 2 and 3, and just dropped dragons on Blue White until they died. It was pretty impressive to see. And so I wanted to get your thoughts there, because I don't know, deck seemed pretty cool. Transformational sideboard, it was a 2-card combo. Like, seems kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think that this deck is one of the decks that I have been most interested in, just because of the draw to it is, like you're saying, the 2-card combo plus the ability to have, there's so many options, so many different card choices you can make with it. Being that it's essentially, having your Neoform plus a way to copy it, plus your 2 mana creature, plus your mimics and your mages and and your Tug Rebel for it and your Combat Celebrant. But beyond that, you can also just you can also sideboard out the combo, which I think is something that people don't necessarily think about. And once you do sideboard out the combo, you can just become this teamer deck, like teamer mid range with some value stuff. And then if the opponent is then trying to react to your combo, like maybe they're sideboarding in their cages and cards like that are good, that completely stop the combo. But if you are then, so it's kind of the song and dance game. I'm a bit worried about main deck cages, because that is kind of just a complete, a complete beating once people are starting to do that. I played against Michael Jacob, who was playing an interesting Fae of Wishes take on the deck, where you can Fae for your Neoform, but also like just the Fae of Wishes is a 2-mana creature, so it was kind of this nice value thing that he had going on. And we had, a close 2 games against my Sultai deck, but I did win 2-0, and I did feel like it was still a little bit of a struggle with all of the interaction that I was presenting, plus the fact that I do know the matchup pretty well.
Yeah, so for me, I never played the deck. I just saw you guys playing it and other people playing it. I like the color combination, but it's really impressive that you have this transfer, like you just change your deck post sideboard. But yeah, if it's open deck list, I think, and people see the sideboard, they could assume it, but then you can go mind game and just don't do it. That's what you mean with the dance, right? It's an interesting thing. I don't know, but that's too 5-fat maybe.
Yeah, so I was thinking like closed deck list. I feel like a lot of people are not going to, 1, understand the combo properly, 2, understand that there's a transitional sideboard coming in and probably just run straight face into it, put a bunch of dead cards into their deck while you go in a totally different direction. And I feel like you could just maybe get some people. Like, Seth, would you recommend people trying it in a closed deck list?
That's a great point. It's definitely better in closed deck lists, and it's way better in best of 1. But beyond that, closed deck lists I think is great for it, because you have no idea what to expect. Now that you're saying that, I kind of want to play it, but I also kind of want to stream this weekend. And so if I'm streaming, it kind of takes away a lot of that, closed deck list value, I guess. But if you're just playing on your own and you have a sweet list and you know the deck, like, yeah, people don't really understand it that well. And I think that's a lot of the value you get from it. It's like you play like, like you can just play like a steam vents in a breeding pool, and all of a sudden you're just like, all right, I'm gonna growth spiral out the combo, and that's game. Like turn 3, it's like like people,
and they have no idea, right? They've got like some creature removal and a guy and an oven or something. Like they have no idea what hit them in closed deck list. So it's a 4-mana combo, right? You have to play the creature that copies a spell into a Neoform.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. You can either you've got the 2-mana copy a 2-mana CC instant or sorcery, the Seagate Stormcaller, I think it is. So you can play that and copy the Neoform, which then you just, with your first Neoform, while the first one's still on the stack, you just get your dual caster mages and your last pull mimics and just keep going. Get all those out of your deck, get the combat celebrant, and then the Tug Rebel for it with the last 2. So you've got that, but you can also do it in another way. You can dual caster mage just by sacking a 2-mana creature, I guess, and that's in play, and then just copying the Neoform. So as long as there's a couple different ways you can do it. And you've also got the Valakut Awakenings to filter through your deck, which is a nice instant speed, filtering. So the deck definitely is gonna get there at some point. You're not always gonna have the combo rolled up, but you have so much card filtering that you're gonna get there by turn 4 or 5, almost like a ton of the time if left unchecked.
If left unchecked being the big like caveat there, because almost every deck plays some sort of interaction.
Also interesting, on the Arena Open, you can choose between best of 1 and best of 3 again. So if you go best of 1, this deck is actually, it's definitely up there.
Fair. Yeah, that's a really good point. I always forget about best of 1. Okay, so another deck along this line is the Paradox Engine combo decks. It looks like there's a couple different versions.
Yep.
Jenny, you said there was an elf version running around now?
Yeah, I mean, there are at least 4 versions, I would say. So we can start off with the classic. That was the one I played day one. We play more rampy artifacts. You just play so many artifacts and you untap and do the engine combo, play through your deck. Then there's the Emery version where you have, it's also artifact based, but with blue, so you have a better sideboard with counters. Then there's the version we saw being played with the, what is his name? The Cannon? Cannon? The
Yeah, Kinnan.
Yeah, with Kinnan. With Uros, Kinnan, and it's about the same, but you don't go through your deck that much, but the cards itself are more powerful. And then you have the ramp versions where you just have Ugins in as well, like the big stuff. And you have the elf version. So literally all just go, most of them play with engine. Maybe the Ugin version don't, but some do as well. But it's all about just comboing off in one turn and then winning with Flux.
I haven't seen this elf version.
I would say you don't need to win with, what do you say you're winning with? Aetherflux Reservoir or something?
Yeah, that's
well. I tested with Kai Bude for this tournament, so I knew the deck he was going to. I mean, Hall of Famer and everything. His version wins with the Thassa's Oracle, with Jace. Sorry, it wins with Jace. So there's a couple different ways to do it. I think that a lot of these versions have the similar issues. They have similar hate cards that are problems for them, whether it be a graveyard disruption card or just Thoughtseize or whatever. So it's been, I think that these decks are like, I don't know, I can't say that which one is better. I liked the one that Kai played. I thought it was a good deck. I don't think it was, it was still, we played a bunch of matchups against Sultai with me knowing, what he was doing. Like cards like Narset, Cages, the like blue-white control stuff. Rest in Peace is, that type of card is if people start to go towards that. So there's hate cards you can play. That's the scary thing about playing the deck. That's why I don't think it will ever be the number one deck, because it's the type of deck like Kethis that there are these hate cards where if it gets to be too popular, then you're going to sink it down. But I think playing it at the right moment, can be a great choice. But it's a metagame call for me.
I also think that the engine deck that Kai played is still really powerful, even if there are some hate cards, because sometimes you saw him turn 3 play like his entire hand because of the engine, right? And Kethis cannot do that. And then you still have a board where opponent is like, oh, I need to answer that board, right?
My interesting thing is the engine itself, because his deck, I felt like the engine was a bit underpowered. Like, if you just play it without the Emery, you don't actually, he had some stuff. He had, Mox Opals. He had a little bit of stuff to untap, but it wasn't like a huge combo-y finish, whereas maybe there's other versions that the Paradox engine, even if you don't have Emery, is going to be a little bit better.
Yeah. So you have the engine plus Forge version, and then just play your deck. That's one of the ways. Then you have the version with Emery and the 1 mana cards where you draw a card and get a mana, and then you just untap, right? And you just you draw your deck basically, right? You draw your deck basically. That's also a version. And the elf version goes more towards the Forge version, where you just keep playing. You play creatures, you untap, play creatures, untap, and just it never ends, right? I like those decks to play. On the ladder, they're really great, I think, in general. But open deck lists, I'm a bit more worried about.
Yeah, decks like those really get an advantage from the, aha, I got you. You kept a hand that was good against like Sultai or Goblins or something, and here I am doing this totally thing that's like kind of out of left field. So another deck that's in this same vein that we saw played quite a bit to some success, and it's kind of dropped off lately, is the God-Pharaoh's Gift deck. It definitely won some tournaments kind of last season. I think more of like the mono black version originally, but now I've seen some versions that have I think other colors in them as well. What's going on with this deck, and why have we not seen it as much lately?
Well, I think for the mono black version, it didn't really gain that much from Kaladesh, whereas the blue white version got the Angel of Invention, which is the key card in that variant. And so if you're gonna just playing mono black is a little bit of a feel bad. Also, Yasharn was one of the newer additions to the format, and that's a really good card against the mono black deck. Or against like Gate to the Afterlife, right? That shuts that. Sacrificing that's gonna be a tough card to answer. So I think that has been, these decks don't necessarily play that much removal. They're chock full of creatures a lot of the time to make sure that their God-Pharaoh's Gift and their gates are turned on, and so they're not that reactive. And so the combination of Yasharn and Graveyard Hate has been probably the reason why the deck hasn't been seeing that much play recently.
Yeah. The only card what I like about the gift deck, it plays around Cage. That's basically, if people start to main deck Cages, I mean, maybe we see some gift decks coming back.
Yep. I mean, Rest in Peace is insane. Cage is irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a huge variation there.
Yeah, and I like that in the white version you play Skyclave Apparition, which can answer both, and that's pretty good. That card is so nice. You can, 3 mana, get rid of mostly. You can also get rid of Yasharn, which is also nice, since Yasharn costs 4, and you can play it again from the graveyard later on with the gift. So
it's just a good card. It's one of the better white creatures we've seen in a long time.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I haven't really seen that version of the deck, but like you said, it seems like it picked up a lot. I like having the answer 2 answers. Literally all 3 of the hate cards, or 2 of the main hate cards that are answered by that one creature, which is pretty sweet.
And the other thing about that is you can play Refurbish in Champion of Wit, so you don't actually need to necessarily. It's not necessarily going to be a Gate to the Afterlife deck. I mean, you can do it in a couple different ways, right? But Refurbish, being able to just pull the gift out of your graveyard means you can start playing Search for Askanta. You can start playing all of these other like blue-white value cards, and you don't necessarily need to be a deck full of creatures.
It could be maybe the deck that sees a bit of a more comeback, because the ladder is full of blue-white and main deck Cages. So if people maybe grab this deck, they could see some success right now in this meta.
Nice. Okay, next up, we have a deck that's pretty good against these combo decks that we were just talking about. This is Mono Blue Tempo, a deck that, won a Players Tour in the Hands of Autumn, but in Standard. Ported over to Historic. I don't think it's had too much success. I played it a little bit, way back when we were testing for the Mythic Invitational. And the deck at the time, again, was kind of like the last deck we talked about. It was a bit of a meta deck, but is now the time for it, because it's good against kind of the control decks. It's good against combo decks. Suffers a little bit more against some of the more aggressive decks, things like Sacrifice. What do you guys think about this deck?
I'm still worried about the consistency problems. Shark Typhoon is still against your best matchups. They almost always have 4 Shark Typhoons. So you're playing the deck to be good against a deck, but you also know that you have to play against 4 Shark Typhoons. So you can play Brazen Borrowers, you can play stuff like that. But the thing about the deck is you really need to just have that curiosity. You need to have the way to start drawing the cards. So it's very similar to blue-white auras, but it feels like the auras deck maybe has, a bit more power because you get the Core Spirit Dancer and you get that whole engine going, whereas you're trying to fight with counter spells in a Shark Typhoon meta, even if you're countering something like a Hydroid Crisis, that never feels great. And you've got these fatal pushes that have just entered the format that literally get rid of all of your creatures. So I'm a stay away here. I'm not touching.
Yeah,
Mono Blue.
I think the same. I would rather play Spirits instead of the Mono Blue version with the Spirit Coco, because I think the creatures there are not that bad right now. You have also Skyclave Apparition. You have that Blue Spirit that the first time a creature gets targeted by a spell, it gets countered automatically. You also have the card whenever a spirit enters, you can tap, right, to play around the Shock Typhoons. I think in that deck you have more ways to play around certain cards, but you have obviously less control cards or counter cards in general. Some spirits are still missing. That would be really nice to make this deck tier 1, like the blue mana 1/1 Mausoleum card where you just sacrifice to counter, or the Osoria Spirit when it enters you can
Rattle Chains, Mausoleum Wanderer.
yeah, like there are definitely some cards you would like to have. But I would rather try Spirits again. But then again, Cage stops Collect the Company, and the Cage main decks, you can only answer a Skyclave Aberration, so at least you have an answer. That's why I would prefer this deck right now. But I agree with Seth. I think if you go like this tempo draw type of deck, I mean, Aura seems just way better.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, I totally agree. Mono blue, as fun as it can be, and you can do some silly things sometimes, but kind of just leaning on a bunch of one casting cost creatures and counter spells just kind of doesn't really get done. And now there's Fatal Push in the format also, which almost all the decks are playing that can play it. Really, and like with Thoughtseize also, just a tough time, I think, in general. Okay, next up on our list is vehicles. So yet again, another deck that got ported over from Standard. This is a deck that run amok in Standard, had to have some cards banned from it. I haven't actually seen it be played yet in Historic, so I'm interested to get your guys' thoughts on this deck. Is it good enough for Historic, or is it yet another Standard deck that's not quite cutting it?
The first day when the new set came out, the remastered set, I built many decks, and this was one of the decks I was building, and I titled it "It's Probably a Scam." That's how I titled the deck, because I was looking at the deck and I was like, okay, how does this compete with this deck and this deck and this deck? Maybe this deck has some legs, but I just feel like it's way weaker than other decks. I mean, you can answer all the cards with pushes, basically. Chandra is still good. I think it's not that good. This is a deck I keep my hands off.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't played the deck that much because it's a relatively new deck, but I like the idea of having Heart of Kirans, Gideons, Chandras. You can even play Hazoret, and then you've got like Bomats and Scroungers.
Yep.
So you've got all of these really annoying threats. So in theory, that's like pretty problematic actually for the 4-color and Sultai decks. But the mana base is kind of it's kind of a little bit flimsy, and once you get to a late game situation, you don't have a late game because you've got so many, your lands aren't doing anything. So anytime you top deck a land in a late game situation is pretty bad. So I'm not going to say the deck is bad, but I think that it is not a deck like it's very draw dependent. It's an aggro deck. So if you like aggro decks, just like pure beat you down, like I need to curve out and kill you quickly, and I think this is fine. I think that's fine for that because there's not that many good aggressive choices in Historic, but it's also a deck that I don't know. It's got some issues, as Danny already pointed out.
Yeah, fair enough. Good points. Okay, moving on. We have a deck that I hate running into on the ladder that I thought was a total meme, but has absolutely destroyed me whenever I'm playing Sultai or 4-color control, and this is Colorless Ramp. So for anyone that doesn't know already, this is a deck that just plays a bunch of like Mindstone, Hand-Drawn Archive, and goes into a bunch of Karns and Ugins. Seth, I'm really interested to get your thoughts on this matchup against Sultai. Like, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, or is this matchup just like absolutely brutal? And if it is good against Sultai, is it good enough against anything else? Because I haven't really seen it pop up too much in tournaments, but it's always on the ladder.
Yeah, so I actually saw this popping up a decent amount before the tournament. We saw some people play it. I think Simon Gortson, I saw him playing it in a feature match. And so this version that's been the most popular version does touch black for Extinction Event. I think if you go back maybe a couple months, it was more colorless or it was maybe green based ramp with all of these same cards, like these archives and just ramping up to Ulamogs and Ugins and all of that. And you have your Karn to kind of toolbox from your sideboard, and so you can kind of figure out, okay, do you want to play black for Extinction Event? And yeah, you get Ifnir Deadlands and you get some stuff like that, or you can play a different color, or you can just be full colorless. So those are the options. I prefer, I think, to play against the black version a little bit than just the all colorless, because Extinction Event's only like, it's fine, but maybe there's a like just having a more consistent ramp kill you plan with Ulamog is what I'm probably the most scared of. But game one is definitely, you're disadvantaged. It's similar to a control deck. It's similar to the control matchups because you've got fatal pushes. You've got these cards in your deck that aren't that good, but in your Extinction Events, your Cry of the Carnariums, your Languishes, whatever removal you have, eliminate. It's not going to be good here. So you have to assume that you're a pretty big dog game one. You can just turbo out a Nissa, right? Like you can just, all right, I'm going to have my Nissa draw. You need a fast Nissa draw. You need to mulligan aggressively game one. And then sideboard games, I think your favorite. You just have negates, you have strokes, you have thought seizes, you have Maelstrom Pulses. Your entire deck is going to be cards that interact with what they're doing. So, and like, yeah, so it's just about managing your turns properly. I think that it's actually a pretty close matchup overall. Initially, I thought it was very bad for Sultai, and I do think that there are ways you can build that deck to be better against Sultai. But then you're really giving up on like Goblins, or you're maybe giving up on Sack, or you're giving up on something else by doing that. So I think as they're currently constructed, they're trying. The deck is trying to beat everything, which means you can't just crush Sultai. So I found it to be it's fine. We played it. I of course played it. I'm not just gonna play Sultai knowing that there's a theoretical terrible matchup, because in theory the matchup is very bad, as you're saying, without actually having played it and trying to diagnose what's going on. But I think in practice it's not the worst.
I did test a deck with the black version with the Extinction Event, and when I played against Sultai on the ladder, I was like, okay, that seems good to me. Obviously, the counters are always the problem with this deck, because you have many expensive spells, and those are your threats. And if they are gone, I mean, you don't do that much. But it's still a cool deck, and this is something I would like to explore. Maybe see if we can play that deck with a different color and not losing too much against Goblins. I would like to explore that.
Nice.
I mean, against control, Ulamog is one of the best cards also. So if blue-white control is on the it's becoming more popular. There's also no like Stony Silence type cards. So your archives, your just turboing out an Ulamog I found to be very good against blue-white control.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that was something I hadn't considered, that if there's a rise in blue-white, this deck could, if it's all like a sea of blue-white and Sultai, maybe a list like this actually might not be too bad. Are you just are you just dead to Goblins though? Do you have like any game against Goblins? You try to go for a cage, I guess.
Ugin. You need to find Ugin.
Yeah, I mean you can Karn for a cage. It's not great. Yeah, it's definitely not a great matchup.
Yeah, I played it as well, and with the Extinction Event, you get a little bit something, but you don't get the entire board. But yeah, Karn cage and then Turbo Ugin, that works.
Yeah, it's not like you're completely dead. Yeah. It's a winnable, but it's not good.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay, these next decks, I'm going to lump them in together. We have Gruul aggro, mono red aggro, and then I'm going to throw out mono green aggro, which was a deck that was destroying the ladder the last time that I was preparing for Historic, but seems to have completely fallen off. I don't see it at all anymore, mono green aggro. Even mono red aggro and Gruul aggro I've seen very little of. Are these decks just not good anymore? Has Fatal Push just kind of like, been a little bit too much? Were they never good?
I faced a lot of mono red aggro yesterday on the ladder, which was kind of interesting. Didn't expect it. Tried to attack the meta, and then suddenly you see mono red and you go like, okay, that's not so fun. That's a classic. I think that's every time meta changes, you see mono red just coming up again, and that's just how it is.
People
right?
like playing it.
Yeah, that's just how it is. Yeah, like the Gruul and the mono red decks, I think they're always not bad, not good, but in the right spot, they can do something.
I think people have a tough time registering these decks for a big tournament, especially if you're a pro, because they don't like just kind of these aggro decks that you're just kind of like, hoping to, like you don't have that many decisions, just as many decisions with some of these decks. It's more just like a curve out style deck. But that being said, Fatal Push did hurt them. We saw Burning Tree Emissary was suspended for a while, so like you can't just say that Gruul was never good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think that those decks are good, and like, but are they the best? Now we're getting into this kind of. I think Gruul actually might be a good choice right now. I've never really liked Mono Red that much. I just feel like having some mix of life gain and cheap removal is great against mono red, but I kind of like the idea of being a more creature based deck right now and just kind of having good creatures, and maybe you're topping out with Cleave. And if people go to my list with Cry of the Carnariums, like Cry doesn't kill a Gruul Spellbreaker, so it doesn't kill a Questing Beast. So like, yeah, I could see a shift back in that direction. I've never really understand the push towards mono green in Historic. Like, you're just not really gaining that much by not having access to the red. And I feel like Burning Tree Emissary is the card that allows you to have the most explosive draws. Like if you go turn 2 Burning Tree into anything, like that's a big incentive.
Yeah.
And you can play Burning Tree in mono green and mono red, but I've just felt like it's better in Gruul. So I feel like the decks all do kind of run a little bit similar. Obviously, you can play a more burn-based version if you're red, etc.
I also want to throw in another deck shortly. We were talking about mono green, and probably will not talk about it. Did you ever try the mono green Planeswalker lists? I mean, they're basically the same as in Pioneer, and they're not that bad. I tried it. I mean, you have like your Vivians, your Nissas, your Karn. You have decent sideboards.
See, that's the deck I actually am more scared of that than Colorless Ramp. I feel like I see them as very similar. A lot of the same cards.
Similar.
But that is maybe a little bit more, like you're a little bit more scary to play against. I think playing Sultai.
I did test it, and there are some sweet new artifacts cards you can get with Karn from your sideboard, like the green Gear Hulk. Let's say it like this. I'm not even sure the name. Like it's a 5 mana. Good creature, and you can buff your other creatures, and the Voracious Hydras are also pretty good. I think I enjoyed the deck.
And you can also just play Nissa if you want.
Yeah, and
right?
you play
like,
Nissa.
You can just Nissa into Ulamog is kind of sweet. Like if you do that, so
I liked it. I liked it. I think I like 65% win rate when I tested it. There's a lot of threats.
Yeah, it's one of those decks that I don't think got that much from Kaladesh. Maybe it got the Green Gear Hulk or something. So there's these decks that I think people, as soon as a new set or multiple new sets, like the new Kaladesh was kind of like 2 sets essentially entering the format. So I think when that happens, it's very easy to forget about old decks and to just kind of try newer things. Because no one's like, oh, Kaladesh came out, I'm gonna play mono green Planeswalkers now. like right, like no one's thinking that. Yeah. So it sometimes takes a while to kind of go back to these types of strategies.
Yeah, it's interesting how that happens. Like, real quick aside on that, how like there's like a groupthink kind of that happens in Magic, right? And people like will just sort of forget about a deck, and then it'll just come back and win a tournament. Everyone's like, oh yeah. Like, why did we like? I feel like that happened with like Fires of Invention. Like every like just like every standard, it would like get hated on and fall off. The tournament would come and like just like 4, 5, 6 copies, and then back down it would go. And then every tournament, because the card was busted, those decks were busted. You could hate on them and whatever, but like just every time, and people got bored of them, I guess. But I see that a lot, surprisingly.
For me, I enjoy that. I actually enjoy playing the last standard deck to see how it holds up against a new deck. That's usually what I try to do. I really enjoy
I
that.
like that as well.
And that's how you met me, right? With the fire stack in February. I was like, that's the moment. That's the moment again. Like I just enjoy that. That's what I like to do. And I tried it with the Green Planeswalker, and it felt really good. So I like it.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I'll have to try out. Okay, so we, like Seth mentioned, there is mono red aggro that's mostly creatures, but then there's also mono red burn, and this is a deck that was like tier 1, tier 1.5. Was supposed to have a really good Goblins matchup.
I don't think it was ever tier 1. Okay, I don't think it was ever tier 1. I think it was a ladder deck.
Yeah,
it was a ladder.
I just wanted to say that as well. Yeah.
People like to play it, so they're playing it. That doesn't mean that it should be tier 1 or that it deserved to be tier 1. We saw it have less than 30% win rates in tournaments, and then it just fell off a cliff. Right?
Imagine day 1, you go like, everyone is brewing, I play mono red on the ladder. That's pretty much what it is, right? So you just crush, you go top 10 easy. And
fair enough.
Yeah, that's how I see it as well.
So moving on then to another monocolor aggro list. We got mono black aggro. So this one actually gets to pick up Fatal Push, not be punished by Fatal Push. This is a deck that we've seen have success in Standard, a little bit in Historic.
I have to argue with you there. I think Fatal Push, just because you can play Fatal Push in your black aggro deck, doesn't mean that it's still worse that like Fatal Push being in the format is still worse for the black aggro deck, even if you can play it, but it's not necessarily that great to play an aggro deck with push. I mean, you don't have that many ways to turn it on, so it's better against you than it is for you.
Yeah, so fair enough. Okay, so we did get Scrap Heap Scrounger. That's a decent upgrade in the deck. Also, Heart of Kirin, they sometimes play as like a 1 or 2 of. But what do you guys think about the mono black aggro deck?
It was also one of my first lists I tested because I know it was pretty strong in Pioneer a while ago, and it's just a really good if you play a curving deck and you just want to go 1, 2, 3 and have threats that come back all the time, I think it's a really good deck. Thoughtseize obviously is a really good card, but I feel like with the deck sometimes you go like, okay, what can I do? Well, I play this creature from the graveyard. Here you go. And that's how it feels. It feels a bit underpowered, in my opinion.
I'd like to play it a bit more. I really like just having access to basically free Castle Lockthwains because I'm a big fan of that card, and so that just gives you this is a deck that is very different from Marty Vehicles, right? Because you actually have a late game. Like you've got Scroungers, which that deck also has. But the big thing is the Castle Lockthwain because you can curve out and then start drawing more cards, and then it's actually pretty annoying. Like I don't enjoy playing against this deck. I think that the deck is pretty solid, but it does have issues. Like if you just play against Goblins or whatever, you're just playing how do you beat a Muxus?
You need to hit the Thoughtseize and not hoping they top deck. And also something, there are 12 cards that come back from your graveyard, and if there's the main deck caged around, well, those 12 cards they stay in the graveyard, right?
Yeah, I mean the cage is good against black, but I don't think it's as good as against some other decks because at least you've still got the creatures. You can play whatever Dread Wanderers or Gutterbones or whatever it is. So I'm fine with that. I think that it's not a GG type of situation. So
I think it's definitely better than Vehicles, but it's not tier 1. Maybe tier 2 to 2.5 around there.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some of the top decks. I think these are tier 1.5, tier 1. So first up, we have the Auras list. So we got blue-white Auras, which we had seen before, and now also black-white Auras that was very popular when the last set came out, and we didn't see any copies, I don't think, last weekend.
Yeah, I think the blue-white version, just having access to the additional card draw that you get is pretty important. So I think I'm personally just think the blue-white versions are better, scarier to play against. And we saw the deck not do that well this weekend because, I mean, in a field of Stack and Sultai, that means fatal pushes and claims and priests and various removal, and so people are going to be pretty prepared.
Yeah, I mean, the blue-white, you play Spell Pierce, you play maybe some protection spell, but the thing is, if there's a Fatal Push and you play your turn 2, I draw cards from my auras and it just dies, you just fall so behind. You have to basically play turn 3 with protection up, hoping there's another way to get rid of it. So, it's tricky.
Extinction Event is also insane against your deck, just because, you're playing these protection creatures to try to like Selfless Savior to try to give your creatures indestructible just in case your opponent does have a removal spell. The problem with that is that it only works against like half the removal spells that are out there. Like it doesn't work against Claims or against Extinction Events or even against Cry of the Carnarium a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree. I still think the deck can go super over the top sometimes if there's no answer, right? It's hard to... If you don't have an answer against this deck, the deck just goes off. But if you have an answer... It was same before.
It's great. It's great against like a colorless deck. Like if you're showing up with colorless ramp or with mono green planeswalkers or like whatever.
Yeah,
like
it's interesting. I played a lot of colorless ramp, and I mean, you sometimes have the combo turn 4, turn 5, and if they didn't manage, you just manage slightly to win.
I guess you do have Extinction Events in that deck, so
it's the thing. Yeah, it's good if you don't get hated out, but even before the new cards, people who played it, if you hit the Thoughtseize correctly and then don't draw the correct cards after the Thoughtseize, you should actually win that matchup, right?
Not salty.
But yeah, that's what it is.
I actually, so against this matchup, I actually boarded my Narsets, by the way. I just like, I like having, I just like cheap cards. Anything cheap to get you to those pushes and Thoughtseizes is I like, and to stop them from drawing cards.
The card draw,
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree. Deck seems very powerful, but again, unfortunate that the protection spells don't line up great against the removal in the format. I think if they did, like if Extinction Event didn't exist, if Claim didn't exist, or they weren't played a lot, I think the deck would, be able to do a lot better. But when you can't protect your guys, such a vital part of your deck, that's tough. It's tough in some matchups. Okay, next up we have Rakdos Arcanist. This deck is a really strange one for me. Like, it's obviously very inherently powerful. When Historic kind of first came out, or when this deck first came on the scene anyway, it was a beast. Like, I remember this deck just being like it was like, is this the best deck maybe? And since then it's kind of ebbed and waned. It's always been around, but just sort of different amounts of popular. As the hate cards for it kind of come in and out, it's sort of done better, done worse. What are you guys' thoughts on the Rakdos Arcanist list? What are the reasons to play it or not play it right now?
I mean, like you're saying, playing it means you think that people aren't going to be showing up with hate cards. We had our Planeswalker Pod tournament. And we saw why you don't play this deck. Why? What? Because people showed up with Rest in Peace to that tournament. It's like, okay, like we saw the matchup multiple times, and I mean, so there's things that can happen to you that are pretty unfortunate if people show up with the right cards. I don't consider this a tier 1 deck anymore. I consider it to be tier 2 to tier 2.5. It didn't gain that much recently. It's nice when you get your Arcanist going, but Arcanist dies to Fatal Push. So, like, Arcanist is, if you get an Arcanist triggering, the deck is kind of doing its thing, but there's too many setup cards, too many things that can go wrong in my experience playing it. I've just, for me, I think it's a bit... it's just not my favorite.
Yeah, it can be fun to play, but if there are hate cards around, I mean, you can deal with Cage with their Braids and your sacrifice like Anger's Rampage, but the enchantments are a big of a problem. Now with Rest in Peace in the format, it's if you see that card turn 2, you go like, okay, I'll leave the game.
Check, please.
Yeah, with blue-white being so prominent, I could see that being a real problem. If blue-white didn't exist, would that be, is the Rakdos Arcanist Sultai matchup? Like, I feel like that one's a lot closer than the blue-white matchup. Is that the case or no?
Yeah, it's close. It's close for sure.
Okay. So perhaps if blue-white dies off or isn't as popular, maybe it might be the time to pick up Arcanist. We're coming down to the last few decks here. It's pretty wild to me when, like, you know, we're going through, I don't even know what it is, like 15 archetypes or something, and yet we're down to the last few, and like we feel like we haven't even really hit the tier 1 decks. It's kind of shocking that there aren't that many tier 1 decks when there are so many archetypes in the format. Okay, so next up we have Jund Sacrifice / Rakdos Sacrifice, which is a newer variant that just drops the green altogether. I have not played with the Rakdos Sacrifice. I've played Rakdos Arcanist. I've played Jund Sacrifice. So, I mean, everyone kind of knows this deck. It's, you know, it tore up standard, needed something to be banned. It's been a staple in historic, you know, since the format was created. Tell me a little bit about Jund Sacrifice. Why should people be playing it, not playing it? And should they be playing the red-black version only? And what are the pros and cons to that list?
Sure. I mean, I would love to have someone who chose to play it come on and tell us their reasoning for playing it this weekend, because it just felt like the target was there with like Yasharn's been entering the format. It just feels like, you know, the nice thing about playing it is you can play Chandra. So Chandra is like, you can put it in these decks and it's a fine card. It doesn't really go with, you know, the rest of your sacrifice stuff, but it's a reasonable thing to be doing. I think the deck is perfectly fine, and it's never going to have, you know, it can beat anything. But, and I personally prefer the Collected Company version a bit. Slight preference to that one. I just haven't felt like the Trail of Crumbs grind you out plan is that good. I actually played against the Trail version a couple times this tournament, and I felt like even though I wasn't playing Yasharns or any of that, I felt like I had the edge there, and I did. I won those matches, and you just don't have that many. It's just I don't like the Trail version. I would stay away from that. I would stay away from Rakdos as well, because I just like the Collected Company version better, and there's not that many things you're gaining from my perspective just by not having Coco. So I still like Jund Coco. I played that in the grand finals, but again, I'm still a stay away from this deck. It didn't do that well, and I don't really expect it to do that well moving forward. Also, I guess playing Coco maybe isn't right anymore if people are main decking Cage. So but I've also just never been a huge advocate of these decks. I've never really liked them that much. So that's who you're talking to that type of player.
I enjoyed playing the decks for a while, but I just don't want to play them anymore. And I also prefer the Coco lists. Feel really powerful sometimes, but I liked Cobalt as well when it was in standard. It was a really cool card, but I just don't want to play it anymore. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. And you know, the Jund Sacrifice deck went like 49% last weekend. Rakdos Sacrifice went 52%. Not super exciting results. Okay, so we're down to the last few decks here. All control variants. So we have Sultai, we have blue-white control, and then also I was just looking at the MTG data information here, and I noticed that there's a Dimir control list on here that I actually did not know about. It says it had a 60% win percentage with only 4 decks, though, so a pretty small sample size. So before we jump into those last two, which are kind of the tier 1 top of the meta at the moment, what can you guys tell me about this Dimir control list?
I saw the list, but
I know 2 of the people that played it because they were on my testing team. So Shahar and Huey both played it. And I think Huey did better than Shahar did. I think it's decent. I mean, it's got a lot of the same tools as Sultai. You just don't have Uro and Krasis and Nissa, but besides that, the deck is really solid.
That's I just want to say after that sentence, when you just tell this to yourself, will you play Sultai or will you like Dimir? I just found it really funny. You don't have Nissa Crisis and Uro, but no, there's no but. It just stops there. Yeah, but, I mean it's a really hate deck, right? Do you play Gearhulk? Did they play Gearhulk in the deck?
Yeah, you have Narset plus Gearhog plus commit. Like those cards work really well together.
Yeah,
I think
a really big hate deck, right? I counter, I remove, I counter, I remove, I draw 7, you draw 1. Basically, that's the main goal of the deck. Yeah, I mean, it can work, right? So you need the correct answers for the correct threats, and you have many answers, but no Uro.
Fair enough. I mean, I miss the Gear Hulk. That's like one of my favorite Magic cards of all time. Just so freaking busted. Just 6 mana flash fatty that you have to play a spell for free. Like, oh man, what's not to love? Kind of surprised to not see more decks pick it up. I guess maybe Historic is just maybe a little too slow for Historic, though. I guess this is one example now of this deck popping up. So interesting to see. It looks like it didn't do too great against Jund Sack or Blue White, but again, small sample sizes. Do you think it's worth exploring? Is there something there, or was this kind of like a bit of a flash in the pan?
I think there could be something, but just after that sentence, I feel I would just like to add green at least for Uro, because Uro would fit so well in the deck, right? I mean, it's not that good with Gearhulk, but just
I think I'm really interested in this deck the most. I just want to add the green cards to the deck.
Sounds like a good plan. That sounds like a good plan.
Just want to put my own spin on it,
Yeah.
So while that we've gone through all of these different decks, and now we're just getting to the tier 1. Really, I don't even know if you guys would consider the sacrifice decks tier 1 anymore or not. Are they tier 1? Are they tier 1.5? I mean, it's not that important. They're still there. They're still a staple of the format, but you can include them. And then we have maybe blue black. I think it's too early to tell though. But Junsack,
that's definitely not tier 1. That's definitely lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about Junsack? Would you consider that tier 1, or is that like 1.5?
I mean, I think if you lump all the sack decks together, they're tier 1 just because people play them and they were the most played deck at the last tournament. So it's hard to say that they're not, but
yeah, they did okay. They didn't do terribly. Okay, so we'll say these are the 3 maybe tier 1 decks, which is kind of surprising. I don't know. I feel like there should be.
Well, wait. We have Goblins, Blue White Control, and Sultai. I think those are the those are the top 3. Those are my top 3.
Tier 1,
yeah. Okay, Goblins. Did we speak? We didn't talk about Goblins yet, did we? I'm always forgetting about Goblins. No. Okay, let's talk about Goblins real quick then before we go to the control decks. I don't know. I picked up Goblins way back when it first came out, played some best of 1, absolutely dunked on people, thought it was hilarious to high roll with Muxus. Played it in some best of 3 even back then. This is months ago. Ran into some hate, ran into some, some cages and stuff and interaction, and was just like, it's a deck. It didn't seem like quite good enough to me, because like, I don't know, if you have cage, if you have enough interaction, like it's just another deck. But for months, people have just been like, this deck's insane. At one point, it was like best deck in format. And like, I get it. I get that the deck does insanely powerful things. It has a great backup plan. Yep. But it's not like anyone's sleeping on it. It's not like anyone's forgetting that Goblins exist. It's like, oh, these cages are just going out of my board. I'm going to pick up something else. No, people are super prepared for the deck, always at all times. I don't get it.
Okay. I think that I don't think that people are as prepared for it as they used to be. We used to see 4 copies of Witch's Vengeance in sideboards, right? Like we used. So I think that the hate has died down a bit. I also think that the 4-color version, without a lot of these languishes or cries or any of that. I mean, we saw the matchups. We saw what Autumn did. It wasn't just luck. It was like she played against Mengu like 3 times in a row and just crushed him. Yep. Like the games weren't even close. It felt like he cheesed one game out, but like it just felt like a very favorable matchup for the Goblins deck. So I think it's very list dependent. You can like Sultai and 4-color are decks that you can you can play more languishes and more stuff like that, but it's going to come at a cost, right? So like if I was looking at the top 8, I think that Autumn had the best deck in the top 8 based on those matchups. I think Goblins is a very real player.
Was their deck different than like a normal Goblins deck?
No, not really. Okay. I mean, they had the Herald's Horns in the main, I guess, versus the sideboard. I don't know that makes. I think every list has some Herald's Horns in it at this point.
Real quick here, 23 Goblins decks played last weekend for a 45% win percentage overall. Losing percentages against 4-color, losing percentages against Jund, really bad, 37% against Jund, 44% against Rakdos Sacrifice, 25% against Sultai, 37% against Azorius Control, and then it's like 83% against Azorius Auras, 100% against the Colorless Ramp, 44% versus other, 46%.
All right. Let me say something. The sack decks are good against Goblins. That's the reason not to play Goblins, I think. I don't think that Sultai and 4-color are inherently ahead. I think it's list dependent, it's play dependent. I don't do everything by the numbers, but I do think that blue-white control and Jund sack are ahead against Goblins. So if that's two of the tier 1 decks that are ahead against you, and then you're not sure about 4-color, then when you put it like that, it doesn't look as good. But I'm saying when I looked at the top 8, which was a lot of 4-color decks that didn't seem prepared for the list that Autumn was playing, it's no surprise to see that result, the finals.
Yeah, against Mango, it feels like there was no real answer, right? You have to cheat out Nissa, like you mentioned before, and that's the way you try to win. And then if not, you just lose.
Yeah, like Mayhem Devil and sack cards are going to be a huge problem for you. There's no getting around that.
Yeah, with the rise of blue white, that might be like another nail in the coffin. But again, like we talked about earlier, closed deck list, open deck list. Also open metagame, more closed metagame. Goblin seems like quite a different thing. If people don't know what's coming, if they're playing just a wide variety of decks that Goblins can dunk on, that's not all Jund and blue white. Maybe not so bad, right? But then you go into like an SCG where it's open deck list, they know what's coming, they can mulligan appropriately, and it's going to be a lot more blue-white control. It's going to be a lot more sacrifice decks. That seems like a tougher sell to me anyways. Okay, so on to our last couple decks here. Do you guys want to start with blue-white control, the sort of new old kid on the block, or do you want to knock Sultai off the list first? Because I mean, we've spoken about Sultai about a million times. There's only so much to say.
Let's just talk about both. Like, I think that both are good decks. I think I've already talked about Sultai. I'm gonna be writing a sideboard guide for Sultai, and I still like Sultai. I just think that you can make a couple changes towards blue white, because I think blue white is going to be the deck that is going to surge in popularity the most after this tournament, because it, of course, won the event. We saw a bunch of people play it in our Planeswalker Pod tournament, and it's good game once against these Sultai decks, but I do think you can kind of maneuver things. It's a deck that I've been beating from the Sultai side, but I probably, like, if I played blue white, I might be winning from that side too. It's that type of thing where it's like it's sometimes hard to tell how all your matchups play out. But I think it's a good deck, and I think it just took this type of result for people to believe in control again. I don't think that blue white was bad. Like, for the last couple months, I don't think it was bad. I just don't think people believed in the deck because it had some poor showings, whether it had been Bant or blue white. It just hadn't done that well, and so I think it took kind of this win for people to once again realize the strength of playing cards like Wrath of God and just all of these control-based cards, and Teferi and Search and all of those cards that are good. So I think that deck is good. I still am most likely to play Sultai this weekend. And no, I'm not playing 4-color. I'm saying when I say Sultai, like I mean Sultai. Like, that's a 3-color deck. So
no white.
No white as of right now. I could see maybe playing some white cards in the sideboard, possibly, but as of right now, I'm sticking to my guns, which is Sultai. But that's also the deck that I played the most and I like the most. So I do think blue-white control is good. We talked about the Goblins matchup is good. And we saw the winner of the Zendikar Championship. I don't think he dropped a single match in Historic. So like, that's not easy to do. Yeah,
it's a good deck. It was always good. It was never bad, right? As you said. Maybe I tried the Esper version. It doesn't feel like better. I think blue white is straight better. I also think maybe Bond with Uro is something you can explore because Uro is
That
just
was a thing, right?
Yeah, it was a thing. It's a good card, Uro, right? And you have a lot of cycle cards as well, which is nice. It's kind of awkward sometimes with Ascanta. Yeah, I mean, if there's a lot of... It really depends how the meta goes now. If everyone thinks there has to be mainboard cages, you can punish it with different decks, and yeah. There will be probably like 1 week of cycle, and then we know. Like, it's going to be around this, I think.
Yeah, so that's it, basically. At the top, we have, blue-white, Sultai, Goblins, and Zac. And I feel like it's been more or less like that for a while. Doesn't seem like... It seems like, a lot of decks have kind of just died off as they sort of just, have been... A lot of the ones we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, the ones that are kind of like tier like 3 maybe, things like mono green planeswalkers, these decks kind of just fall out of popularity. With this metagame that we've seen for a while, is there any chance to like take some other deck like mono green planeswalkers or one of the Paradox engines or one of these other decks? Is there any way to attack that metagame that you guys see, or is it just too difficult when you have like Goblins on one end, Stack on the other, and like control up top? Is it just too difficult to actually go against all those things at once?
I think attacking the metagame is possible. You want to come at it from a place of surprise. If you take one of these decks that are tiers 2 or 3, you want to be playing a deck that you want to be doing something that you don't think people are going to expect, because you can get value, especially in closed deck list events, from coming from a different angle. And I'm considering that for this weekend. I'm considering bringing one of those decks. Maybe it's a Neoform or a Paradox Engine or something. Like, those Paradox Engine decks are very difficult to play against. So I don't like playing against them unless I know exactly what I'm up against. So those types of things where I don't necessarily think that these decks are inherently more powerful, because they're not, right? They're tier 2 for a reason. But I think you can hit the metagame if you time it correctly. You can hit the metagame in the right place.
Yeah, also I saw yesterday Gabriel and Steve testing a Dimir version of the Sultai deck, just removing the red cards with the black cards with red cards and adding like Dragonfires to hit Narsets and having Sweltering Sun, so you have cycle ability if you play against a control deck. And it felt really good when I tested it, and I was basically playing it asleep, and I won all the games. There could be something. I'm pretty sure we'll test. I think he was testing it today as well. But there are definitely some new type of decks that could come around, just attacking the current meta and changing some stuff up.
Nice. Well, it's going to be exciting to see one way or another. I know I'm going to be playing a lot of Historic this week, both of you guys as well. Why don't you let everyone know when, if possible, and where they can find you playing some Historic this week and next week?
Yeah, so I'm going to be playing the Historic Open this weekend for sure. So I'm planning on streaming it on my Twitch channel, obviously, Seth Manfield MTG. That's probably the best. I may try to do a stream earlier in the week, maybe on Thursday or some. I'm probably going to do at least one stream to try to figure out exactly what my list is. Still likely to play Sultai, but we'll see.
Yeah, also going to stream, but mainly preparation. I'm probably going to stream the Arena Open in the Discord due to naming reasons. Yeah, that's probably what I'm going to do. So you can find me in the Planeswalker Podcast Discord on the weekend, streaming the money game, or how I call it, the gem game. And yeah, that's where you're going to find me. And yeah.
Gotta get those gems. Yeah, same for me. I'm streaming every single day. Historic prep, and then the weekend tournaments, and then more prep next week, and then into that qualifier. Danny and I gotta go show Deninja and Seth how it's done, but first we gotta get there.
Yeah.
Torch
gem.
TV, Jason Floron. As we're signing off, wanted to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, Cool Stuff Inc. For all of your gaming supplies, to buy, sell cards, for strategy articles, for podcasts, whatever your MTG needs are, go to coolstuffinc.com. They're really awesome people. We really appreciate them sponsoring the podcast and our tournaments. So be sure to come join the Patreon as well, so you can get into the next free tournament to enter for all of our patrons. You can win some $500 Cool Stuff Inc., some piece of $500 Cool Stuff Inc. store credit, as well as potentially a hashtag SethKeep t-shirt. I can't wait for my mug to show up. And with that, we'll say adieu. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awkward sign off.
Achieved. Mission accomplished.